Hi guys, Shepherd here from Mfidie.com and welcome to an in-depth look at the new POCO F3's design and camera. In an earlier video, I spoke about how I joined the POCO Enthusiast program and how I got to review this phone here in Ghana. You should check that video out. In this video, we'll look at all of the things that make the POCO F3 a beauty design-wise and also explore its complicated camera. Sit tight and let's get into the video. The POCO F3 has two Gorilla Glass 5 panels on either side of the device, and these are kept in by the plastic frame which is curved and glossy to give it a premium feel. At the back of the phone, there is the 48 megapixel triple AI camera setup, which we'll go more into at the camera section of the review. However, the way the camera setup is designed helps the POCO F3 to greatly stand out. One of the first questions I asked myself when I got the POCO F3 was whether it was water resistant. I compared the device with the POCO X3 Pro, which had much more ports and is IP53 rated. They share a lot of similarities, and it is surprising why POCO does not say this phone is water resistant. For now, I can only say that the POCO F3 can withstand water splashes and may as well be IP53 rated. POCO may just have not advertised it that way for us. Well, we wait to see. The POCO F3 comes in three colors. These are the Arctic White, Deep Ocean Blue, and the Night Black. The review unit I have with me here is the Night Black. I must say that the glossiness of the device makes it easy to pick up fingerprints, but if you have one of those transparent cases that came in the box, then this issue is solved. Now let's switch things a bit and look at the front of the device. It's no wonder that this is the part of the device we'll be watching most of the time anyway. The screen is a 6.67-inch AMOLED display with 1080 pixels of resolution and 120 Hz refresh rate. Although with the refresh rate, you can adjust it in the settings to a lower one if you want more from your battery. If you got the F2, then you would notice that the 120 Hz is a very welcomed upgrade. Also very noticeable on the POCO F3 is the very thin bezels, as well as a very tiny punch hole camera. This particular camera at the front shoots at 20 megapixels. We'll look at that later on in the review. Oh, and before I forget, one feature of the screen I love is the fact that if the always on display is disabled, you can opt for screen breathing lights, which turn up whenever there is a new notification. Very cool. Now, to the right side of the device, there is the conveniently placed fingerprint sensor on the standby or power button. This makes for a very good design, as unlocking the phone is very seamless. The speed and accuracy of this fingerprint sensor is unmatched with other devices I've tried in this category. For someone like me who is used to using a device with the fingerprint sensor at the back of it, I love this new standby button, and it took me a while to get used to it. Nevertheless, it was a very welcomed addition. The volume buttons are also right there at the top of the power button, so if you need to make any controls on volume, they are just a finger away. At the top of the POCO F3, there are two grills. The first one is for the top speaker, while the second one hides another microphone and the IR blaster. I actually tried the IR blaster with my LG TV and it works very well. I kind of find it cool since not a lot of devices nowadays come with this. Overall, the POCO F3 is thin, noticeably thinner than the F2 and the POCO S3 Pro. It's also very lightweight to carry at just 196 grams. I love how the whole body looks with its premium finish and glossy back, and it fits very well in the hands, even for me who is so used to holding the small Google Pixel 5. It's so good to handle and use, and if you love to show off your gadgets, then it works well in that regard too. Throughout the last 3 weeks, I've had people asking me about it and wanting to know where they could even buy one from. You could say it's a premium finish. So at a price of 2,000 Ghana cedis, it is definitely one of the best phones in this range, and I love the feeling and vibes I get while using it. As a water-loving person, I would have loved that there is an official IP53 rating on this phone, but that hasn't stopped me from taking it to the pool sometime. What do you think about the design of the F3? Do you have any specific questions you want to ask? Do so in the comment section below. Now let's look at the performance and the features of the camera that comes with the POCO F3. The triple camera system on the POCO F3 is very similar to that of the POCO X3 Pro, with the noticeable difference being a macro camera with autofocus instead of a depth sensor. At the front of the device, there is the 20 megapixel selfie camera. It's at the back of the device where things get very interesting. Now, let's take a close look at the technicalities of the cameras at the back. The first camera is a 48 megapixel primary camera relying on the Sony IMX582 quad Bayer half-inch sensor with 0.8 micron pixels, 25mm f1.8 lens, and a face detection autofocus system. Then there is the 8 megapixel 1/4 inch Sony IMX355 snapper with an ultra-wide angle 50mm f2.2 lens. The focus is fixed on this camera, unlike the first one. Both the first and second cameras all have night mode present with them. The last camera at the back is the macro lens, which features a 5 megapixel Samsung S5K5E8 sensor with 1.75 micron pixels and 49mm f2.4 telemacro lens, which also has autofocus. Enough of the specifications. Let's look at how the camera works with the camera app that comes with the phone. The camera app comes with the normal MIUI interface, and you can switch between the interface by either swiping left or right. The zoom shortcut on the interface helps you to switch between ultra wide, regular, 1x and 2x zoom, which are all digital zoom by the way. At the top of the interface viewfinder, you will find switches for the following: flash mode, HDR, and AI. There is also the Google Lens and the Beauty wand, which has effects and filters. You also have the hamburger menu, where you can find more options like aspect ratios and the macro lens option. If you're a professional photographer, then the Pro mode is what's for you. It gives extra power and flexibility to those who want to do more with their photo taking skills. The Pro mode works on all the 3 cameras at the back. It allows you to set up to a 30-second shutter speed, and you can increase the ISO all the way to 6400. So, I went out and took some photos with the POCO F3. The main default camera of the POCO F3 shoots 12 megapixel, and these are very much okay for a phone in the mid-range section costing 2,000 Ghana cedis. There is enough detail on images, although sometimes you feel the processing is a bit too much when you zoom in. The colors and contrast are however natural and very good. Occasionally, the camera triggers the auto HDR feature for better visuals. However, overall, the photos were of very good quality. One feature I enjoyed more on the camera was the AI mode, which mostly recognizes specific scenes and applies some color corrections to the scenes. It can detect people, pets, objects, landscape and gardens. It even detects buildings. You can turn the AI mode on or off by using the AI toggle on the viewfinder, which we talked about earlier. Also, on the viewfinder, there is the 2x zoom switch, but since the phone does not utilize a telephoto lens, it just crops and upscales the images. Don't expect the best of pixel quality photos when you zoom in. There is also the 48 megapixel camera, which gives you the option to take photos at higher resolution. If you really need the extra resolution, you should use it. Otherwise, it is best to stick with the 12 megapixel default camera. The 48 megapixel camera makes noticeable trade-off in the processing, and the images it produces are way too big in size. Sometimes about 3 times the size of photos taken with the 12 megapixel default shooter. Then, when it comes to perspective and a wider field of view, there is the 8 megapixel ultra-wide camera. There is a bit of noise reduction there, so the photos are noticeably soft. However, the perspective that the ultra-wide camera provides is what you should opt for. Personally, I used it a lot when taking photos of places to include on Google Maps. If you don't like the quality of the ultra-wide camera, you can also opt for the old school panorama mode. Take a panorama photo and then crop it out to the level where you want it. Prior to the POCO F3, I had not done a lot of macro photography. However, the 5 megapixel macro camera on the POCO F3 gave me a new hobby, that's macro photography. One thing is for sure, you need to practice with the phone for a while before you can take very good macro photos with it. The photos from the macro lens were good, sometimes very amazing, and at other times dull with the slimmest of shakes. So, if you really want to enjoy macro photography on the POCO F3, then you need to have steady hands, or maybe an extra pair of gear. When it comes to portrait photography, the lack of a depth sensor is telling. The POCO F3 uses software to separate subjects and the background. However, the images are still good for a camera without a depth sensor. If you are looking to take portrait photos with this phone, be careful when shooting with a lot of hair in the foreground. It sometimes confuses the algorithm. Maybe POCO would make this better with an update, as we have seen on other devices like the Pixel 5 and 4. What's a camera if we are not taking selfies? Let's look at the capabilities of the front camera too. Trying out the selfie camera produces some very nice photos at 20 megapixels. When it comes to group pictures of 3+ people, the camera still does well, keeping everyone in focus and keeping colors to their true tone. Portraits on the selfie camera were however not that great as they were with the rear camera. You will have some ears blurred out a little and some hair too blurred out. I also explored the night mode on the POCO F3. The night mode takes longer to take photos after the shutter button is pressed, so it is important to keep the phone steady during the seconds where the photo is being taken. Night mode on the ultra mode camera was however not the best in terms of quality. The images were noticeably bright, and that's a plus for it though. Still in the night, I tried out the long exposure mode to see what I could achieve with it. That mode is particularly fancy, and POCO even has some presets for it. But truth be told, those pictures just look good on the phone. Maybe I needed extra gear to keep my hand from constantly shaking. But one thing is for sure again, if you're comparing it to higher end devices, the long exposure is not so great. Now let's talk about the video capabilities of the POCO F3. I've already used the POCO F3 to record some personal videos, but for this review, I decided to take videos at different resolutions and frame rates as available on the device. The POCO F3 can capture 4K footage at 30 frames per second. For higher frames, that's 60 frames per second, you can get a 1080p quality video. You can also stick to 1080p at 30 frames per second if you want to save more space. There is standard electronic image stabilization on both the main camera and the ultra-wide camera. They should be able to handle minimal shake. All of the videos in these reviews were hand-taken with no extra gear at all. When it comes to the sound quality of recorded videos, the POCO F3 utilizes a 3-microphone system to give a surround sound and also minimize background noise. Hope you enjoyed the videos. This is how we wrap up the design and camera review of the POCO F3. What is it you loved and what would you want improved in the next F line of the POCO F series? Share with us in the comment section and keep watching this channel. Thank you so much for your time. Till we meet again, it's bye.